News at 10.
It was the clarion call to a new way of doing news.
British Airways and some unions join forces to fly the flag again. 1,250 engineers get the sack. West Germany's public prosecutor has been assassinated. Council tenants in Dover make legal history. It'll be a white Easter holiday for some. Good evening. The management and unions of British Airways are linking together to help to get the airline flying again by next Tuesday, despite the engineers' dispute.
The BBC strike is over. They'll pay 16.5%. The petrol drivers settled, but that's secret. If you want to ask a policeman, try the West End. We captured the moon, but what did we do with it? At London Airport, Christmas is fogged off. Good evening. The BBC's strike over pay is over. Queen's speech, no bill on the unions yet. President Reagan says he's won the midterm elections. Must Ireland's Prime Minister campaign again after tomorrow? The seal cull the fishermen like and others hate. And the siege at Turkey's consulate in Cologne. Good evening. The Prime Minister, Mrs. Thatcher, kept her options open for a general election any time she wants next year. Mr. DL calls Mrs. Thatcher a crook and he's expelled. The Education Secretary faces a new tussle with the teachers. The Essex police must explain their failure in the Bamber case. Foreign fishermen are told steer clear of the Falklands. And we've reason to believe you're only here for the grass. The pensioner who's beaten the government on housing benefit. Labour's Mr. Meacher loses to the Observer. He says he'll appeal. The Home Office wants to put 2 Earth channels into space. John Embury takes a hammering and the England job. And the man who took the public's money says, I'll pay it back. Good evening. The government's been told today that it was wrong to stop housing benefit supplement for old age pensioners.
From the headquarters of ITN, News at 10, with Trevor MacDonald.
The anger grows as all sides join in the budget attack. Firefighters head for a national strike over pay. Mosques are flattened in eastern Bosnia as ethnic cleansing continues. And how this teenager hacked his way into trouble. Good evening. Labour attacked Mr. Lamont's budget proposals today as deception on a massive and unprecedented scale.
From the headquarters of ITN, News at 10, with Trevor MacDonald.
A bar owner's grief, a province in despair. Critical stage as rail talks go on into the night. O.J. Simpson in court, he says he's not guilty. And Agassi's back, but where's the fun in tennis today? Good evening. The misery of mindless killing in Northern Ireland was etched on the face of a Loughlin Island bar owner today.
From ITN, News at 10 with Trevor MacDonald.
Labour landslide sweeps Blair into Downing Street. Major steps down and finds time to watch some cricket. The face of defeat that symbolised a Tory disaster. And the children who'll be moving in at number 10. Good evening. Tony Blair was carried into Downing Street today on a political landslide.
Blair's big Euro launch. Hague hits back tonight. Pakistan's army leaders finally show their hand. Dando murder, new twist over car spotted near scene. And how Wales lost but won a new world record.
From ITN, the ITV Nightly News with Katie Derham.
Good evening. The Conservative leader William Hague announced tonight that he's to mount what he's calling a full-blooded nationwide campaign to save the pound.
Prince Charles says foot and mouth could lead farmers to suicide. New lead in the hunt for the real IRA taxi bombers. British campaigner beaten up by Mugabe's bodyguards. And Sunderland and Villa battle it out to the end.
From ITN, the ITV News at 10 with Trevor MacDonald.
Good evening. Prince Charles spoke today of the desperation felt by farmers coping with foot and mouth disease. Battles rage, leaving heavy casualties on both sides.
They will now fly the white flag.
American prisoners paraded in breach of the Geneva Convention. And Baghdad on the edge as America and Britain close in.
The ITV News at 9 with Trevor MacDonald in Kuwait.
Good evening. We are sad to confirm tonight that one of our correspondents, Terry Lloyd, has been killed while covering the war in Iraq.
Just how many sex offenders are teaching in our classrooms? Ruth Kelly admits she doesn't know. Parents are furious.
We do not want those individuals in our schools putting our children at risk.
The Education Secretary is under growing pressure tonight after admitting several registered sex offenders have been cleared to work in schools. Also tonight, dicing with death, how some people in Turkey are hiding their chickens to beat the cull. Goodbye, my friend, a tearful farewell to the policewoman shot dead in Bradford. Leader or laughingstock, Ming's bad day at the office.
And I'll be explaining why the ram in this poster ran into trouble for making beer too sexy.
And in the northwest, back to the scene of a nightmare. The survivor of Britain's worst cycling accident talks of his devastation.
Good evening. Revealed, the deputy head convicted today for sexually abusing a 14-year-old girl. The government was warned 2 years ago that Nigel Jackson was a danger to children. But no one took any notice. The extraordinary story of yet another teacher free to abuse. Our investigation shows that for months the Department of Education didn't even reply to a letter warning that Jackson should be blacklisted. As pressure mounts on Ruth Kelly, another shocking failure in a system that's meant to protect our children. Also tonight. Freezing to death, we report from beyond the snow line where Pakistan's quake victims are dying every day.
I've been camping high up in the mountains of Pakistan to see how the survivors of the earthquake are coping with the onset of a Himalayan winter.
Nuclear showdown. Is Israel preparing to attack Iran's nuclear facilities? We speak to the pilot who knows. And saved by the World Cup, what the FA said today about Sven and the fake shake.
And in the northwest, mourning his son, a father's painstaking final farewell for the teenager who died in Britain's worst cycling tragedy.
Good evening. Tony Blair says he believes America will act to tackle climate change. He tells me it's the most serious threat we face, but the mood is changing across the globe. Tonight, new hope that a climate deal with the world's major polluters is finally on the way.
There is a changing mood around the world. For the first time, I think in America they're prepared to act. And so I'm more optimistic than I was, but we've got to work at it.
We're live in Antarctica, where scientists believe climate change is already happening, and we report on how rising sea levels are already having a dramatic effect thousands of miles away. The first climate change refugees, the islanders forced to leave their homes for good. Also tonight. Terror on the tube, the moment an alleged bomber tried to detonate his device and the fireman who tackled him. And homeowners beware, fears of another hike in mortgage rates as inflation hits an 11-year high.
And in the northwest, the man who was told he'd won the Canadian lottery by con men who took £80,000.
Good evening from Antarctica, the first frontier in the battle against climate change. £4 million, the ransom demanded tonight by Somali pirates as their British hostages reveal the strain of their ordeal.
Thank you very much. Please give our love, especially to Paul's father. We tell him we miss him very much.
For the second day running, News at 10 has managed to speak to the Chandlers, this time to Rachel, who broke down as she said she and her husband Paul were bearing up.
Also on the programme, sacked tonight, the government drugs advisor who said ecstasy was less harmful than alcohol. Postal misery, union leaders announced yet more strikes as the backlog of letters tops 35 million. And saving Sophie, cash pours in for the little girl who needs £500,000 for cancer treatment in America.
Good evening. Within the last hour, it's emerged that pirates holding a British couple captive in Somalia have demanded a ransom of more than £4 million. The ultimate sacrifice of a soldier who saved countless lives. Killed by a Taliban bomb days before he was due to see his wife and his son.
This is the ITV News at 10 with Mark Austin and Julie Etchingham.
Staff Sergeant Olaf Schmidt spoke to ITV News before leaving for Afghanistan. He died defusing one more bomb before coming home. Also tonight. Breeding terror inside the most lawless country on earth and why it could pose the greatest threat to Britain's safety. And
Oh, that's amazing, brilliant.
The chance of life, the moment this little girl's mum found out a dream had come true for her daughter.
New arrival, Wayne Rooney leaves hospital tonight after becoming a dad.
Predatory and pervasive, the appalling scale and nature of Savile's sex abuse revealed. But never charged, never prosecuted. He was the monster everyone knew who hid in plain sight.
I think we were all taken in. You could say he groomed a nation.
This is the ITV News at 10 with Alistair Stewart and Natasha Kaplinsky.
The Crown Prosecutor and the police apologise for years of inaction and say it is a watershed. For Savile's victims, the relief of being believed at last. Also on the programme, job shock in manufacturing as Honda sack 800 in the face of falling demand across Europe.
On the high street too, nearly 1,500 Gert Jessops. A fresh warning tonight of a shrinking economy.
2 middle-aged men stabbed to death in Birmingham city centre as rush hour crowds look on.
Syrian rebels celebrate the capture of one of President Assad's key air bases, a major blow to his regime.
And Kate says her first portrait is amazing. Others are less generous.
It's the kind of image, in fact, that you might see in a high street photographer's window.
Good evening. The hideous Jekyll and Hyde nature of Jimmy Savile's life was confirmed today in reports by the police. A surge in killing in Israel, the US accuses both sides of terrorism. The dead Jews and Arabs are now counted in double figures. Hamas call it a new intifada.
Also on the programme, Lord Britain's MP accuser apologises for the hurt he caused, but stands by his claims of sex abuse.
Obama's journey of condolence to the bereaved of Oregon, greeted by a pro-gun rally.
And we're inside secretive North Korea and witness the blitz mentality deep under the Capitol.
The other countries will follow our country, I think, in the recent years. So we are masters of the vote.
This is ITV News at 10 with Alistair Stewart and Natasha Kaplinsky.
Good evening. The simmering anger of a bloody week in Israel boiled over into deadly violence today, with more deaths.
More job losses at Tata Steel beg a string of inevitable questions tonight. Can the industry now be saved? Should it be? And if so, why is the government sitting on its hands? Also on News at 10 tonight. Learn English or go home, says David Cameron. We are home, say the immigrants we've spoken to, but we should have learnt English. You can't ban Donald Trump for being stupid, say MPs, though some admit they're tempted. And I was made in Dagenham, says Idris Elba, but I could only make it in film and TV by leaving Britain.
Made in Hackney, made in Newham, made in Dagenham, but above all, I was made in my mind.
This is ITV News at 10 with Tom Bradby.
Good evening. Once in a while, you do encounter a statistic that does seem to cut straight to the heart of an issue.